This next segment of the show is one of my favorites. Dr. Red Matthews, he is what I call a guest lecture. So everyone give it up for Dr. Red Matthews, everybody.
Oh, everyone knows my favorite part of the show is shaking Dia's hand. Love that guy. All right, so who am I? My name is Greg Matthews, and as Dia said, I'm a doctor. My PhD is in statistics, and which I think is the superior of all the sciences. And so what I like to do is I like to take the topic of the show and I like to do a statistical analysis of it. And the topic of the show tonight is, well, it was stem cells, sort of development now, but it's the same thing, right? So I want to talk about stem cells tonight. And I want to start out by talking about how yesterday just so happened to be Stem Cell Awareness Day. Let's give it up for Stem Cell Awareness Day yesterday. Did anyone celebrate? Did anyone do anything interesting? Stem Cell Awareness Day? Did anyone celebrate? No? All right, well, great. But more importantly, there's a little card that says, we're ready to STEM celebrate your rebirth day. Pretty fantastic little Etsy card. What else is October 9th? Does anyone remember what happened 8 years ago on October 9th? Does anyone remember? This is a more exciting anniversary for me. It was Ken Bone Day. 8 years ago, we were introduced to Ken Bone. So let's give it up for Ken Bone a little bit. Yeah. I just wanted an excuse to put him. He has nothing to do with stem cells. I just wanted to put a Ken Bone slide in. So let's talk about what are stem cells. So stem cells, a common misconception about stem cells is that they are simply any type of cells that the Republican Party does not like. It's a pretty common misconception. That's not actually true. The real definition is that they're an unspecified cell capable of perpetuating itself through cell division and having the potential to give rise to differentiated cells with specialized function. But that's science, and Republicans don't like that either, so it doesn't matter either way. Republicans don't like that. Okay, so I'm learning too. I didn't realize what stem cells were. I had no idea. Okay, so what I did is I was trying to figure out what to do with stem cells, and I went on Google's Ngram viewer. Have you ever been on this before? Where you look at it shows you usages of words over the past, like 200 years. And so I looked at stem cells, and this explodes in the 1990s, right? We weren't really talking about stem cells much as a society. In the 1960s, it took off a little bit, and then it explodes in the 1990s. And so what I got to wondering is, what are other patterns of cell word usage, right? So I looked up here, there's things like blood cell and cancer cell and tumor cell, and there's some interesting patterns here, but I wanted to look at all of the possible blank cell words. So the data set that I got the Google 2-gram data set, right? So what do I mean by a 2-gram? 2 grams are just words that appear next to each other. So examples of this might include things like dog shit, or horse shit, or shit stick. And notice all these, they're all just showing up. In the 60s, things just took off with dog shit, horse shit, and shit stick. I don't know what that says about society, but it is what it is. So these are 2 grams, right? What I wanted to do, so these are all used, this is counting how many times the phrase shit stick gets used in literature, whatever corpus Google has decided, okay? So I went and got the entire Google 2-gram data set. There's 589 files. These are each about 1.8 gigs. This is just over a terabyte of data. I searched through all of the 2 grams with cell as the second word. So I didn't want all the 2 grams. I just looked at the ones with cell. This took about 139 hours with my computer just running in the background, which is about 6 days. So I'm tenured, and when I say to you that, thank you for clapping, I appreciate that. When I say that I am not committed to research or teaching or service, I'm very much committed to the show. I am absolutely serious about that. You can tell my chair, you can tell my dean, what are they gonna do, fire me? No, that's right. Okay, so let's look at some results. So here's some I looked at the big changes in words over centuries and decades. By decade, these are the biggest jumps, and what you'll notice here is that STEM is number 1. These are the jumps going from the previous decade to the next decade. So STEM is the stem cell is the blank cell 2-gram that jumped the most from the 2000s to the 2010s. So that's kind of interesting. And then these are some epithelial, I don't know, some of you nerds probably know what that means. If I do this for the biggest drop from the previous decade, number 1 is laminal. Now, I didn't know what a laminal cell is because I'm a cool scientist. I'm not a nerd scientist like all these biologist people. So I looked up what a laminal cell was, and a laminal cell is a layer of extracellular matrix secreted by epithelial cells on which the epithelium sits. And a common misconception is that these are often incorrectly referred to as the basement membrane. Can you even imagine someone referring these to the basement membrane? I mean, it's totally ridiculous. And if you didn't know this, if you didn't know what a laminal cell was, you are, say it with me, I was going to say stupid. All right, okay, so you're stupid if you don't know what a laminal cell is. That's just a little bit of a fun fact for you. Okay, so by biggest drops by century, from the 1800s to the 2000s, we have marginal cell. That was the biggest drop from the 1800s to the 2000s. From the 1800s to the 1900s, Zincode cell. This is an old-timey word for anode, which is the positive part of a battery. I don't know. And then from the 1900s to the 2000s, it's an APUD cell. Right? Does anyone know what APUD stands for? Does anyone know? Well, it stands for amina precursor uptake and decarboxylation. And if you didn't know that, you are, say it with me, stupid. It's okay. What I tell all my students is the best way to learn is through shame. If you don't know something, no, hear me out. If you don't know something, and I give you the answer, and then I tell you you're stupid for not knowing that, the shame will make you remember it. It's part of vacation pedagogy. Look it up. That's what the Jesuits teach. Oh boy. Okay, by century, the biggest jumps. So the biggest jump from the 1800s to the 1900s was digital cell. That kind of makes sense, right? Microfluidic cell jumped from the 1900s to 2000s. And then from the 1800s to the 2000s, click cell is the one that jumped the most from the 1800s to the 2000s. And this is because of the use of Excel, right? They're talking about like click a cell. If you use Excel, you are stupid. No, you're actually a dummy. Sorry. Excel 2016 for dummies. Don't use Excel. The people who use Excel are the people who don't know what they're doing. I like to look down from the ivory tower at the Excel users and just go, you adorable little data analyst wannabe. Okay. That's what statisticians say. Okay, so let's look at some interesting findings. It's important when you do a data analysis, so let's dig deeper into the data set, all right? So I found some interesting blank cell usages here. Gonad cell has this really nice there's these like three spikes of gonad cell, and you can sort of break them off like this, right? There's a line in like the early 60s, there's another one in the 80s, and there's another one in the late 2000s, which correspond exactly with the beginning of these generations, boomers, millennials, and Gen Z. So at every beginning of these generations, there is a gonad spike. I don't know what this means, or I don't know what to do with this information, but I'm giving it to you. I don't know what to do with it. Gonad cell, it defines generations. Fancy cell, there's a big spike here around 2014, and I did some sleuthing on my own, and I actually found out that on February 2014, this is when Iggy Azalea released the song Fancy. And so I think this is this is interesting, this is art being reflected by science, right? Fancy cell, there's a spike here, and that's why she released the song. I assume this is all causal. Yeah. There's not actually something called fancy cell, it's just for fancy cell phones, right? But it's still fancy cell, it counts. It makes it through the regular expression. So there it is, there's an example of, in Google, when you put an engram in, it'll give you these graphs, but it'll also give you an example of how the word is used. And so this is the first one that it came up with, fancy cell phone, and I was like, oh, that's what it is. And then I started reading the other text around this. Everything around us screams the bigger the better. Bigger breast, bigger penis, bigger wallet, bigger cell, bigger screens, bigger whatnot. When it comes to sex, size does not matter. And then at the bottom, it says, but big breasts or a big penis will not keep them interested for long if you lack the right attitude and know zilch about what really matters. So I was like, what could this possibly be from? It's from this. It's from some author called Tarshi, which is the Talking About Reproductive and Sexual Health. It's a guide for teenagers. And this is just another example of how adults have no idea how to talk to teenagers about anything. They're just like, please don't. In the 80s, they were like, just say no to drugs, and then there's nothing funnier than doing drugs while like wearing a Just Say No t-shirt or a Dare t-shirt. Adults have no idea how to talk to teenagers. So then I found pirate cell, and there's this big spike here, and I just want to show you the example literature that we found here. So this is some text from Head of Pirate Cell 2. I don't really care much about this. This is from a book called Tanu's Vengeance, and I just want to show you the picture of this cover because it brings me joy. And there it is, Tanu's Vengeance, pirate cell. It's in there. Look at that. I don't know what's going on in that picture, but it brings me joy, and I'm going to share it with you. I want to show you two last ones here. Mall cell. So malls. I'm like, what is a mall cell? And I really couldn't figure this out. I still don't. Well, I did figure it out. If you look at this is the text. And what's happening here is that this text is from the 1800s. It's really small cell, but Google's scanning couldn't figure it out. So it just keeps mall cell in the data set, but it's really small cell. And this comes from a book called the New Encyclopedia Universal Dictionary. And this is the way, it's from 1807, but Google is actually storing this. If you look here, they can't separate the of arts. And so it's being stored as oh farts. And so I was like, surely Google can't really be doing this. They can't really be counting oh farts in the Google Ngram data set, but no, they actually are. So there's this huge spike in 2000 of the phrase oh farts, and it's clearly just of arts, but they can't separate it, and for whatever reason, some like Google technician made a mistake, and there's all these oh farts in the Google Ngram data. So then I was wondering, is oh farts really a thing? So I scoured the internet. I didn't scour it, I just Googled it. I just Googled oh farts, and I got this thing that came up here. This is ohfarts.ca, so it's ohfarts.canada, and it is a group from Canada called the Old Foreign Affairs Retired Technicians, and the acronym is oh farts. Now, remember the picture of the lazy guy saying tenured? When I say that I have spent hours in this website, that is not an exaggeration. I did the research for you, the fans. I'm here for you. I don't do it for me. And so I was like, imagine if you were a retired person and you made a website, and you made it exactly a perfect old person website, this is what you would get. There's just links everywhere, there's an oh farts mailbag, but there's 2014 Christmas luncheon photos. Yes, please. So I went and looked at the luncheon photos, and here's this old guy. Hold on. This guy's going, oh, yes, that is the correct. She's going like this. She's going, So this is a picture from their 2014 luncheon. At the bottom of this page, there was a link that says, if you're interested in first Christmas lunch, look here. I am very interested. And so here's the first picture when you click on this link is a picture of the actual meal. Nom, 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 nom. I jumped up. Let me do that again. The first picture that you see when you click this link is a picture of the meal they had at the first Christmas lunch. Nom, 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 nom. Look at the rolls wrapped up. There's a lot of grays and pinks and browns. It's delicious. Calm down. That's a delicacy in oh fart circles. Then I found it's the same guy. It's the same guy. This is the first picture right here, and that's him at the first one. But I like to imagine this is a series of photos where he has a happy marriage, he's in love with his wife, and then he had to get glasses because things have gone downhill with his eyes. And look, his wife's unhappy with him, and they're going through a rough spot in their marriage. It's telling a story of the oh farts. I spent a lot of time. Okay, that's the oh farts. Finally, what's the funniest cell of all? Does anyone know what the funniest cell of all is? What? Yes, that is correct. It's incels. Incel is correct. So incel, if you look over here, incel spiked at the beginning. It peaked in January 2021. And why did it spike? Because there was a large gathering of incels in Washington, D.C., and I have a photo of it. Here it is. That's the largest incel gathering in the history of the United States. They tried to overturn an election. It was a good time. It was a real nice time. They were like, we're not having sex. Let's overturn the election. I don't know what they were saying. Okay, but then I was like, what is going on over here? What is this right here? Who were the incels in the 1800s? So I went and I said, all right, give me some examples of incel in the 1800s. And so I looked over here and we have intellectual, but it's not. It's just a typo, right? That's a T. That's an old-timey T. And so it really says intellectual. It says intellectual, but it's being stored as incel-intellectual. So you could read that as intellectual. Have you ever been so inspired when you hear something that your world just gets brighter and you have a brilliant idea and everything is clear what you must do? That's how I felt when I heard the term intellectual. And so what should I do? Well, the same thing I do whenever I hear something brilliant. I make a Twitter account for intellectual. And so I woke up. This is you can follow me. You should follow me. You're gonna follow me on she's checking it out. Follow me right now, you do it. All right. Intellectual And I woke up. It was like 5:30 in the morning. I woke up and I was like, I got it. I gotta make a Twitter account. And so this is just a guy. That's a Chad right there. That's a Chad meme. And he's sexually frustrated in a Kafkaesque world because he's an intellectual, but he's also not having sex. So, and he lives in his mom's basement. He follows 5 people. You know, the king of the incels, Andrew Tate, Elon Musk, Trump, Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson. That's who an incel would follow, I imagine. And I'd like to read you. He has 3 tweets. They are. Did I have sex today? Nope. I guess I'll go back to reading Voltaire. He's an intellectual. Not having sex. Kierkegaard spoke of despair, but I doubt even he could fathom the loneliness of being invisible in a world obsessed with appearances. Hashtag red pill. Oh, and finally, you know, Isaac Newton never had sex. Maybe I'm a genius too. I don't know. You're not though. You're. There are geniuses out there that are undiscovered. It's not you. I'm sure of it. What have we learned today? No one can stop you from creating a billion Twitter accounts. You can just create, do you know if you take your email address, your Gmail address, and you add a plus to it, so I'm GJM112 plus intellectual@gmail.com, you have an infinite number of email addresses, and you can sign up for an infinite number of Twitter accounts. It's incredible. Gonads define generations. And finally, big breasts or a big penis will not keep them interested for long. Here's a picture of Kwong, and you can follow me on Instagram, and there's Intellectual. Follow me on Intellectual. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Give it for Dr. Red Matthews, everybody. It truly horrifies and delights me. Like after seeing Sarah, so like every postdoc here is doing beautiful work, and just to hope they can get the job when Brett retires. There's 8 job openings, and Greg is taking one of them. Okay, we have a special Poppin doing a quit comedy set for you. He's amazing. He's a writer for At Midnight. Start signing up for Skylar Higley, everybody.